Most people think the scariest thing about homeownership is the mortgage. They're wrong. The scariest thing is realizing that a 70-year-old woman named Brenda holds the power to seize your property because she doesn't like the way you walk to the refrigerator. When my wife, Sarah, and I bought the upper-level unit in what was supposed to be a quiet, upscale community, we thought we were buying peace of mind. 6 months later, I was standing in front of a judge, holding a USB drive that contained the career-ending, humiliating audio recording of our HOA president. Trust me, what went down next would make any courtroom drama blush. If you love real homeowner justice stories like this, hit subscribe now. You don't want to miss how this one flips. By the time this story was over, the entire board would be dissolved, 2 people would be facing fraud charges, and Brenda would be forced to sell her home to pay my legal fees. But before we got to the gavel slamming down, we had to go through hell. It started on a Tuesday, not with a bang, but with a certified letter taped to our front door. I remember pulling it off the wood. It was an official violation notice from the Eagle Creek Homeowners Association. The charge? Excessive impact, noise, and violation of quiet enjoyment clauses. The fine? $100. I laughed. I actually laughed. I walked into the kitchen where Sarah was making tea. Sarah is 5'2". On a heavy day, she weighs 110 pounds. She doesn't walk. She glides. We have a no-shoes policy in the house. We have thick, plush carpeting in the bedrooms. The idea that she was stomping around was physically impossible. I assumed it was a mistake. I went downstairs to knock on the unit below us. That's where Brenda lived. Brenda wasn't just a neighbor. She was the self-appointed queen of Eagle Creek and the president of the HOA board for 12 consecutive years. She opened the door before I could even knock, almost like she was waiting. She didn't say hello. She just stared at me over the rim of her glasses and said, "Did you get the bill?" "Brenda," I said, trying to keep it neighborly. "I think there's a misunderstanding. Sarah and I are barely home, and when we are, we're quiet. The letter says." She cut me off. "The letter says you are disrupting the peace." I can hear her. Thump, 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 every night. It's vibrating my chandeliers. Pay the fine, or it doubles in 30 days. Then she slammed the door in my face. We didn't pay. We wrote a polite letter of appeal to the management company. 2 weeks later, another notice appeared. The fine hadn't just doubled, it had tripled. They added a non-compliance fee. And then, the harassment started to get creative. If we parked 2 inches over the white line, find out if our trash can was out 10 minutes past pickup, find out if a delivery driver left a package on the porch for more than an hour. Fine. Unsightly clutter. But the walking complaints were the worst. Brenda started keeping a log. She would bang on her ceiling, our floor, with a broom handle at 2 a.m., screaming that we were waking her up while we were dead asleep. It was psychological warfare. Sarah started tiptoeing in her own house. She stopped inviting friends over. She was terrified to drop a spoon in the kitchen. The breaking point came 3 months in. We came home from a weekend trip to find a legal threat taped to the door. It was a notice of intent to lien. They were threatening to take the house over $1,500 in accumulated fines for noise violations. That night, I watched my wife cry at the kitchen table. She whispered, "Maybe we should just sell. Maybe we just leave." That was the moment the switch flipped. I looked at Sarah, wiped the tears off her face, and said, "No, we aren't leaving. Brenda is." I realized I had been playing a game of he said, she said, with a woman who owned the referee. The board was composed of Brenda, her best friend Janice, and a guy named Ted who was asleep for every meeting. Appeals went nowhere because Brenda was the appeals process. To beat a tyrant, you don't need arguments. You need data. Cold, hard, indisputable data. I spent the next 3 nights reading the CC and RS, the covenants, conditions, and restrictions of our HOA. I read all 200 pages, and I found something interesting in Article 4, Section C regarding noise complaints. It stated that for a noise fine to be levied, it had to be verified by an independent party or measured to exceed 55 decibels in the complainant's unit. Brenda had never measured anything. She was fining us based on her feelings. I didn't just want to win the argument. I wanted to trap her. I went on Amazon and ordered 3 professional-grade decibel loggers with timestamp data recording. I also bought 4 Wise cameras with audio capabilities. But the piece de resistance? I hired a certified acoustical engineer named Marcus. I called Marcus and told him, I want you to come to my house. I want you to stomp on the floor. I want you to drop bowling balls. And I want you to measure exactly how much sound actually travels downstairs. I need a report that will stand up in Supreme Court." Marcus laughed. "I love these jobs. When do we start?" But as I was preparing my defense, I noticed something else in the bylaws. Something about board member term limits that looked like it had been amended 5 years ago. The font was slightly different. The margins were off. I dug deeper. I requested the meeting minutes from 2019 through 2024. The management company dragged their feet, but by law, they had to provide them. When the PDF finally arrived in my inbox, I saw it. Brenda wasn't just a cranky neighbor. Brenda was a fraud. I stared at the PDF on my monitor until my eyes watered. The typeface on the 2019 amendment to board term limits wasn't Times New Roman like the rest of the document. It was something else, maybe Garamond. It was subtle, but to a desperate man looking for a lifeline, it was a neon sign. I forwarded the documents to a real estate attorney friend of mine, Dave. I asked him a simple question. Was this amendment ever actually filed with the county clerk? While Dave went hunting for the legal paper trail, I moved forward with the technical sting. Marcus, the acoustical engineer, arrived on a Thursday morning with equipment that looked like it belonged to a bomb squad. He set up impact noise generators, basically little machines that tapped the floor with a calibrated force, and placed vibration sensors all over our hardwood and carpeted areas. For 3 hours, we simulated everything. Sarah walking, me walking, dropping a book, moving a chair. Marcus looked at the data on his tablet and shook his head. "This building has concrete separation layers," he said. "I'm stomping right now, and the transfer below is registering at less than 30 decibels. A whisper is 30 decibels. For her to hear thumping, you'd have to be jumping off the refrigerator in steel-toed boots." He printed out a certified, stamped report. We had scientific proof that the noise complaints were physically impossible. But proof of innocence isn't enough for a tyrant. I needed proof of malice. That's where the phantom weekend came in. We told the neighbors loud enough for everyone to hear that we were staying home for a movie marathon weekend. We made a show of bringing in groceries. Then, under the cover of darkness at 11 p.m. on Friday, Sarah and I packed a bag, snuck out the back fire escape, and drove to a hotel 2 towns over. We left the house completely empty for 48 hours. But it wasn't offline. I left 3 Wise cameras pointing at the floor, recording 24/7 with the sound on. Next to each camera, I placed a specialized decibel logger with a digital clock in the frame, synced to the second. We returned late Sunday night. On Monday morning, like clockwork, the email arrived from the HOA management portal. Notice of violation. Date, Saturday, October 14th. Time, 9:30 p.m. Description, intense stomping, running, and dragging of heavy furniture. Fine, $250. I felt a rush of adrenaline that was almost intoxicating. Brenda had just found an empty house. I pulled the footage. At 9:30 p.m. on Saturday, the house was silent. The decibel meter read 28 dB, the sound of the refrigerator humming. But then, on the audio track, I heard it. Thump, thump, thump. It wasn't coming from inside our apartment. It was coming from below. I cranked the volume. I could hear a muffled voice screaming through the floorboards. It was Brenda. She was banging on her own ceiling with a broom, then calling the management company to report us for the noise she was making. She was manufacturing the chaos to justify the fines. I had her. I had the science. I had the video proof of the phantom noise. Then my phone rang. It was Dave, the lawyer. "You're not going to believe this," Dave said, his voice low. I pulled the county records. The 2019 amendment extending term limits? It doesn't exist. The last legally filed bylaws are from 2012. They state a strict 2-year term limit for the president. Meaning? I asked. Meaning Brenda has been illegally occupying the seat of president for the last 8 years. Every fine she's signed, every contract she's approved, every lien she's threatened since 2016 is null and void. She's not just a bad neighbor, buddy. She's impersonating an officer of the corporation. This is fraud. I looked at the calendar. The annual general meeting was in 4 days. Usually, these meetings were attended by 3 people, Brenda, her cronies, and maybe one confused new owner. I decided to change that. I spent the next 3 days acting like a ghost. I didn't confront Brenda. I didn't appeal the new fine. I let her think she had broken us. Meanwhile, I printed 50 flyers. I went to every single door in the complex, all 40 units. The flyer didn't say, "Come support me." It said, "HOA audit reveals financial irregularities and illegal board activity. Come see where your dues are going." I knew that would get them. People don't care about noise complaints. They care about their money. By the night of the meeting, I had a binder 3 inches thick. I had the audio files loaded onto a laptop connected to the community center's projector. I had the lawyer, Dave, sitting in the back row in a suit. Brenda walked into the room holding her gavel like a weapon. She sat at the head of the table, adjusted her glasses, and looked at the unusually packed room with a sneer. She spotted me in the front row. "I see we have a large turnout," she said, her voice dripping with condescension. "We will get through the budget quickly. We have no time for homeowner complaints tonight." I stood up. My heart was hammering against my ribs, but my voice was steady. "Actually, Brenda," I said, holding up the USB drive, "we're going to make time." The room went quiet enough to hear a pin drop. Even the hum of the old ceiling fan seemed to hold its breath. Brenda's painted smile faltered, and the twitch in her cheek gave her away. For the first time since I'd known her, she wasn't in control of the boardroom. "Excuse me," she said, whisper sharp. "This meeting is not on the agenda for—" I interrupted her, loud and clear. "That's fine, Brenda. Because technically, you're not on the agenda either." The murmurs started immediately, neighbors glancing at each other, confused but curious. Behind me, I knew Dave was quietly recording the entire thing on his phone. The HOA's own recording secretary was sweating bullets, not sure if he should be typing this official meeting transcript or running for the door. I walked to the projector and plugged in my laptop. "Let's start simple," I said, clicking the first slide on the screen. Eagle Creek Noise Complaint Series, Evidence Review. The room filled with the faint echo of the first audio clip, the unmistakable rhythm of Brenda's broom handle pounding her own ceiling, followed by her muffled voice yelling, "Stop stomping up there." Then came the video feed from the living room. Our apartment, completely empty, with the timestamp and the live decibel reading in the corner, 28 dB, quiet. Still, undeniable. I paused the video, letting the room simmer in awkward silence before I said, "This is supposed to be the night Brenda says we were running marathons over her head. Except there's no one home. No music. No footsteps. Just her, creating the noise, and calling it a violation." A low whistle came from somewhere near the back. Janice, Brenda's best friend and vice president, actually muttered under her breath, "Oh my God, Brenda." Brenda slammed her gavel on the table. "Crack. That is an illegal recording. This meeting is getting out of hand." "Actually," I said, cutting her off again, Section 3E of the HOA bylaws allows any owner to document evidence related to disputes in common or private property. Remember, I've read them. All 200 pages. She turned red, somewhere between a tomato and a stop sign. You have no right." Dave stood up from the back. "He absolutely does, ma'am," he said, flashing his attorney's badge. "And not just to play that video. We're going to talk about your status on this board." Every eye in the room turned toward him. Dave lifted a stack of legal documents and said, "I'm a licensed attorney in this county. My firm submitted a records request with the county recorder's office. What we discovered is that the last legitimate filing of the HOA bylaws was in 2012, when Brenda's term as president expired." He turned toward the projector, clicking to the next slide. Displayed on the screen was a county seal and a statement marked "No record found" beside a digital signature. "Brenda K. Swenson." Dave continued, "This woman has falsified amendments, illegally extended her presidency, and unlawfully enforced fines for nearly 8 years. None of those fines are valid. Every lien she's ever threatened is fraudulent." A collective gasp spread through the room like a wave. Even Ted, the board member who usually snored through meetings, sat up straight like a man struck by lightning. Brenda went rigid. "You can't prove that." Dave smiled wolfish. "Actually, we can. And we will." He nodded to me. That was my cue. I switched to the final slide, an image collage of bank transfer records, provided by a whistleblower at the management company. Transfers labeled Maintenance Reserve had been going straight to a private account in Brenda's name. Over $40,000 had quietly disappeared in 5 years. That was it. Brenda knew she was cornered. "This is defamation," she shrieked. "You people have no idea how these systems work. I'll sue every one of you, every. She never finished. The room was already in chaos. Homeowners standing, shouting, snapping pictures with their phones. Janice scooted her chair back, muttering, I didn't sign up for jail time, and bolted for the door. Ted raised his hand weakly. Motion to remove Brenda as president, permanently. Half the room shouted second, before the words even left his mouth. I didn't even have to gloat. Watching the color drain from Brenda's face was more satisfying than any final one-liner I could have delivered. She slammed her gavel one last time, but it no longer meant anything. The power had shifted. The vote was unanimous. Brenda, Queen of Eagle Creek, enforcer of silence and fines, was dethroned in real time. By the next morning, she was issued an immediate board removal notice and a demand for financial restitution pending investigation. But karma wasn't done with her yet. 2 weeks later, the county announced a criminal inquiry into misappropriation of HOA funds. The management company terminated its contract with her signature still wet on the notice. Brenda listed her condo 6 weeks after that. Rumors said she sold at a loss to pay her legal bills. As for us, we stayed. The new board reimbursed every single homeowner who'd been wrongly fined. They apologized publicly, and on a crisp Saturday morning, Sarah and I did something symbolic. We walked all around the apartment, loudly, playfully, in sneakers. When a neighbor upstairs joked, "Careful, Brenda might hear you," the room broke into laughter. I turned to the camera, the one I'd been secretly filming the whole ordeal for, and said, "Sometimes the loudest step you can take is standing your ground."